Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. It is the 24th of December, and that means it's time for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis here at the Cardinal Nation, as well as on your favorite podcast apps in both audio and video form. Happy holidays to you, Kyle.
Happy holidays, Brian. Well, welcome, and I'm excited about this episode. We got a lot to cover.
Yeah, it's again when you think it's a week where maybe nothing's going to happen because of the holidays. The St. Louis Cardinals got motivated and they made some big moves. Of course, the biggest is the signing of right-handed reliever, left-handed reliever, minor league reliever Jared Schuster. So we're going to devote the entire episode to Jared Schuster and his pluses and minuses, because Jeff Passan thinks that he's going to be. Oh no, John Palmarosi thinks that he's going to be the replacement for Jojo Romero in the bullpen. No, seriously, we will come back to Jared Schuster later, but we got to start with the Willson Contreras trade. There's a lot of noise out there that apparently Chaim Bloom only has a hotline to Boston and he's not talking to the other guys, and that's ridiculous. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't care where they get the prospects from as long as they're good players. What's your take kind of on the general lay of the land before we get into the players?
Yeah, Brian, I have the same thought. I get that it's a fun thing to talk about and to, I guess, worry about that the Cardinals can only have only made trades with the Red Sox, but the Red Sox have a deep farm system. They were probably a top 3 or 5 farm system in all of baseball, and they've poached some of the really interesting arms. Getting Brandon Clark in the Sonny Gray trade is still like the coup. I think about that guy a lot. To get an arm that talented it's huge. So if they keep poaching good arms and good players from the Red Sox, who cares if that's the team that they're trading with?
And it's kind of interesting. Clark was ranked fifth in the Boston system. I went back and looked at the year before, and Richard Fitz, who nobody is suggesting is going to be a direct one-to-one replacement for Sonny Gray. Richard Fitz was their 10th ranked prospect, coming up, and ironically, Hunter Dobbins, who's the guy was the centerpiece of the Contreras trade. When he went on the injured list, Fitz got called up to take his place in the rotation. So the two of them were sort of interchangeable in the back end of the Boston rotation a year ago. What do you think about Hunter Dobbins as a major league starter? Is he going to be a guy, or is he going to be a guy to compete for a job when
I
he's
would think,
healthy?
yeah. So it really does come down to health. As we know, he tore his ACL, and now he's marching his way back. It sounds like he's healthy and he'll be ready to go. We'll see where it all goes from there. But I think when I watch that guy, he's kind of like an old, exactly what we've kind of associated with the old regime, right? His fastball is kind of subpar. And then he has three-ish off-speed offerings that are all really solid off-speed offerings, varying levels of average or above, or even flashing plus. So, my guess is the Cardinals will bring him in. They'll try to augment the fastball, which of course the Red Sox have done, and they have not had a lot of luck. And then he'll get a chance to throw all of his breaking pitches and off-speed pitches in an attempt to maximize what he's done. He's not a strikeout guy, but maybe if you can just get to a little bit more usage advantages with what he does well, then you'll have a back end of the rotation, but could still be your number 2 or number 3 in this rotation type starter. So again, I would imagine that as everything is currently constructed between McGreevy and May and all of the guys and Libertor and Palante and every Fitz and all these guys, like there will be a pretty hefty and pretty hardy competition as we enter spring training, and he should be a part of that. So, yeah.
So let's come back to a point you made a minute ago, Kyle, and that is until now, until the Contreras trade, the Cardinals had been focused on getting high strikeout guys. And we go back to the draft, right? Guys that can strike, and you look at the three guys, and we'll get into the others, with the exception of Fajardo, who is still so low in the minors, you don't know what to say. It doesn't look like they had that same priority.
It seems to me like they just kind of decided that they were going to get the best arms that they could, and they definitely got some players with some interesting traits, and they all have the ability to kind of spin the baseball, which is usually an indication that with a little bit of work, you can get to more velocity or you can get to a better shape. The problem is, and they all do a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground too. But yeah, as of right now, what all three of the pitchers acquired for Willson Contreras lack is the ability to get swing and miss with their fastball, because the fastballs are all kind of subpar from both a measurement and a result standpoint. So, but the positive there is, even if the Cardinals make some trades, and again, this doesn't apply to Fajardo or Aida. This is more about Dobbins and Fitz and those guys. But like most of these guys do a good job of keeping the ball on the ground. and in the park. And really, the Cardinals. The one thing about the Cardinals is currently constructed is they're still a pretty solid defensive team. It's not going to be exactly as good as it was last year, but it's still a solid defensive team. So keeping the ball on the ground is still going to give them a chance to win more games than they otherwise might. And that's what you have to look at and you have to hope for if you're working underneath the assumption that the Cardinals can be competitive in 2025 with the pieces that they currently have.
All right, so let's get into the detail on the two pitchers. Um, Yoiker Fajardo was ranked number 9 in the Boston system according to Baseball America, whereas Blake Aida was number 28. You don't see the guys with that big of a gap between them, but let's get into why. What is it about Fajardo that maybe you're not as excited about, and what is it about Aida that you are more excited about?
Brian, I'm going to work on contradicting myself, a little bit of a hypocrite. And what I'm going to say is the issue that I have is that none of these guys have particularly good fastball. And
Well,
so
you're not contradicting yourself. That's very consistent with what you just said.
that's fair. That's a good point. So what happens is when you start to strip down these pitchers, you can kind of take the fastball out of the equation because they're all below average offerings, even for Fajardo. Now Fajardo has had a lot of success with both his fastball and his sinker because he commands both of these pitches particularly well, and he throws the ball between 94 and 96 miles an hour with both the fastball and the sinker. And Brian, we know that at the lower levels, you're going to get great results with that. And he did. He struck out 28% of hitters, only walked 6. But the issue is that when he gets into high A, he's going to struggle more. And then when he gets into double A, without these pitches changing and shapes changing, he's going to get hammered around. That's just the facts, And if he can sneak through double A with the fastball being what it is, then he's going to get hammered at triple A in the majors. The fastball is going to be an issue. Then, you're talking about a guy who needs to throw his fastball 30% of the time and rely on his slider and his changeup. Now, I think where Fajardo really has the edge on someone like Aida is that he does have a slider that I think is above average that can flash plus, and a changeup specifically thrown to lefties that can also flash plus but live in the above average range. So he has 2 off-speed pitches as a 19-year-old that he can get swing and miss. One very good against righties, the other one very good against lefties. Where someone like Aida is kind of lacking is he has a sweeper that I think we can all agree is plus. It gets swing and miss, it gets chase, but he doesn't really have a third offering on the caliber of what Fajardo has as a third offering, no matter which pitch you're going with. So that's kind of the big difference. But I think what I like more about Aida as opposed to Fajardo, and again, there's a 3-year age difference here. Fajardo's 19 years old, Aida's 22.
A lot can happen in 3 years, Kyle.
And a lot will happen in 3 years. To your point, Brian, I think that Aida's fastball gets more swing and miss. It gets more chase. It's just still not an acceptable amount. It's not a carry amount, but it's a fastball that has a lot of ride. Now, what he doesn't have is Fajardo's velocity, and I'm willing to bet that the Cardinals will work to get him stronger. Not to say the Red Sox haven't. It just hasn't clicked with the Red Sox. They'll work to get him stronger so that he can get to that 94 to 96 mile an hour velocity, and then his swinging strike rate, which is like 16 right now with his fastball, and he just throws a fastball, he doesn't throw a sinker, which is 16 now, will tick up to 20, and then that actually makes that pitch average in results. So
go ahead.
No, so that I feel like when we're just talking about what he has, he also Aida also throws a cutter. That's really his primary secondary offering. He'll need to turn that into a slider. It'll need to be a gyro slider or something a little heavier. The Cardinals will work with him there, and then he actually has a changeup that's budding. It's a budding pitch, but it's just not there yet. So I just think Aida has more to work with, and I actually like what he does just a little bit better, quite honestly.
Kyle, when you evaluate a prospect, and these guys are both guys that are in A-ball, and they've got a sinker slider that or something like that that's a good combination, but the fastball's lacking. What does that say about their major league future? Are they going to be more likely to be a reliever, or does that not necessarily aim them toward the pin that they don't have a put away fastball?
Yeah, so that's where it's really fascinating, right? We've talked a lot about like Brandon Clark, and it's this new kick I've been on. I've been on it for about a year, Brian, where we talk about these high velocity pitchers who have some volatility in their delivery, and we say there's some real reliever risk there. And really, it's reliever fallback. Like, it's not easy to be a major league reliever. What those pitchers have is reliever fallback. And really, without a fastball, you don't really have reliever fallback. It's either all starter or nothing until you get into higher velocities. Like, even think about Chris Roycroft. Chris Roycroft can throw the ball 100 miles an hour, and he has one of the sickest sinkers in all of Major League Baseball. when he's in the majors, but his command doesn't allow him to be in the majors much. He's usually in the minors, and he doesn't command it particularly well. He is the unique example of, uh, I guess he's not a unique example. He's the example of like you need to have elite stuff with velocity to pitch out of the bullpen these days. So without like for someone like Bayardo or even Aida or even Dobbins to be reliever fallback, they would actually need to or have a quote unquote reliever risk. What I'm calling reliever fallback, they actually need to have a better fastball, a better sinker. Otherwise, what they are is just innings eaters on a middling team in the middle innings.
Okay, and that's why they're not in the top 10 and they're going to be down somewhere. And one of the things that Kyle and I have to work out is where we're going to insert these guys into our top 50, which will then obviously become top 52. And the Cardinals aren't done trading yet. So, watch this space. But seriously, Kyle, if you're not reading Kyle's prospect reports about all 50 prospects, or at least through down into the teens where we're coming this week, you really need to because he puts a lot of thought into this, and I've learned something every time I read him.
Yeah, it's usually probably something about how neurotic I am, Brian, but you're going to learn something one way or the other.
Well, sometimes I learn about grammar or new words new adjectives that I never heard of before. There's all kinds of things that I learned from that. But
Every once in a
anyway,
while, you might get a Biggie Smalls lyric in there. You just really never know what you're going to get.
you never know, and you got to stay to the '80s and earlier if you want to keep me engaged because it's just on Jeopardy the other night. There was a category about lyrics, and they were all from like newer songs, and I was like, huh, I'm out of it. I'm out of it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
about.
so back to baseball. Let's talk briefly about Jared Schuster, former first rounder of the Atlanta Braves, has bounced around a lot, gotten hit around as a major leaguer, has been okay in the minors. We know that they're going to need left-handed depth, especially if they trade JoJo Romero. But even if they don't, they still need left-handed depth. Is this a guy that can help?
Brian, no. So
Well,
let
maybe
me
really good in Memphis.
yeah, he could be a lot of help in Memphis. No, we'll see what happens when he gets in the Cardinals organization. Let me tell you the angle I want to go at Jared Schuster about, Brian, and this is going to be me talking about our rankings
Oh,
because I've got a little bit of whining to do. And the whining I have to do is Jared Schuster was picked 25th overall in the 2020 draft.
the
And I
COVID,
find
the COVID, the
myself,
COVID, the COVID draft
the
when there
COVID
wasn't as
draft.
much scouting, but anyway.
Well, the other day, I'm sitting in a coffee shop writing about one of the Cardinals 2020 draft picks, Markevian Hens, seething at the idea of having to write about Markevian for the sixth year in a row, really. So, I mean, it's funny to think that Jared Schuster, now again, Markevian was a 17-year-old at draft time or 18-year-old. Schuster was a college kid from Wake Forest. It's a different conversation.
By,
But
by the
Schuster,
way, by the way, nobody calls him Markevian except his mother. I just wanted, so you obviously are in with the Hans family, but go ahead.
oh, Marky Mark. No, it's just a cool name.
Yeah, yeah,
If I
yeah.
had a name that sounded like it was from the Middle Ages, that's all I'd call myself. I talk in the third person all the time.
Markevian, the Dark Knight.
Yes, yes, that's it,
Anyway,
Brian.
I completely derailed your line of thinking. Back to Hens.
He should walk up. I'm not getting back to that. He should walk up to the mound in full body armor. He should look like a knight. Um, but it's funny to think like Jared Schuster has made his way through the majors already. He's been on multiple clubs and pitched, been through the waiver wire, all of it, and here we are still writing about Tink Hence, uh, who has not made it at above Double A, mostly because of arm problems, but he's still this really promising prospect. And I wanted to use that as kind of like a juxtaposition, not only to tell you where Tink Hence is, where Schuster is, but also to say that, like, even now, Schuster's 27, Tink Hence is 23, or however old he is. And he could be 30 at this point. And Schuster is, you can still develop this. You can still get more out of them. Maybe he throws his changeup in his, well, I guess right now he is throwing his changeup in his slider about as much as he's throwing his fastball. But maybe you can augment him. Maybe you can find something, and then all of a sudden he's throwing his slider 50% of the time, and his changeup 40% of the time, and a fastball 10% of the time, and he's having success pitching out of the bullpen in a specialized role as a lefty. What it does do more than anything is it backfills some left-handed depth issues in a relief role that the Cardinals have.
And we don't need to get too excited about it because it's a minor league contract. He's not taking a 40-man spot. So if he fizzles out, he fizzles out. And if they get something out of him, they get something out of him. But he has used up all his minor league options. So if he does earn his way back on the 40-man, he's going to be one of these guys who either has to stay up or he's going to be gonzo. And if he's not good enough to stay up, he probably ought to be Gonzo.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
so one of the things that's come up in our top 50 as the guy who's been editing your excellent scouting reports, you talk a lot about when a pitcher is going or is ready to go from double A to triple A and this difference between the minor league baseball and the major league baseball, which is the baseball that they also use in triple A. And I know it has to do with the seam height, but beyond that, I don't know a lot. Tell everybody listening, watching, a little bit about why that's a big deal for some pitchers and maybe more for some rather than others.
Yeah, what we've seen a lot, and this isn't just with the Cardinals, this is minor league baseball, major league organization wide, is that as pitchers start to use the Major League Baseball at AAA, they they'll see a decrease in velocity and their stuff will move differently if held the same way and released the same way. Now, my understanding, because there really hasn't been uh, a lot of scientific exploration on this, this is more players who've been up and down the minors talking about it. And of course, Major League Baseball acknowledging the fact that they are two different baseballs because of cost. So, what you can glean from just these conversations that the players that have been in AAA and AA and the majors have brought forth is that the seams are taller with the minor league baseball. Uh, so, what
They're
usually ends up,
taller with the minor league baseball.
yes, I now I don't
So
remember if
wouldn't
the
that
word
so wouldn't that slow it down because there's more wind resistance?
that so what ends up happening is it also allows you to grip it and rip it a little
Oh,
bit more, so you can actually get when you're throwing, you can actually get more movement on it,
I
and
got it. I got it.
it cuts exactly it cuts into the wind and breaks how you need it to. Uh, the Major League Baseball is a little harder and what pitchers describe as slicker, which means that you don't necessarily get as good of a feel for it. And upon contact, the ball flies a little bit further. So you kind of have this thing that ends up happening when the seams shrink on the Major League Baseball, where you can't dig into it to get the break that you want, and also the contact is harder off the bat. So hitters are having more success. Pitchers aren't gripping it and ripping it like they used to. Now, you hear
So
some other.
which kind of pitchers does this hurt the most? Does it hurt the guy with the dominating fastball, or does it hurt the guy who's more of a sinker slider kind of guy?
Brian, I think it's really simple. It just hurts. The less movement you have on your stuff with the double A ball, the more you're going to be hurt with the triple A ball. It's just I don't think I don't think it's like it hurts the sinker guys. It hurts the slider guys. It's kind of like, and I shouldn't do it this way, Brian, but it's kind of like when you go and play at Coors Field. It doesn't matter if you're a four seam guy or a sinker. If you have a heavy slider, a heavy sweeper, the ball acts different with the altitude in Colorado. So it's kind of the same thing, just minor league wide, where you have this ball that is of different construct. We've heard it called, I said harder, but we've also heard it called strung tighter. The major league ball as compared to the minor league ball, which would also help it fly. So it's just like, and also made of better material uh, than the minor league ball to keep cost down. So all of these things kind of play in to really, as crazy as it sounds, throwing with a different product. For everybody who's coached minor or who's coached like little league or just came out of little league, because I'm sure we've got some teenagers listening and some families, and it's like when
By the way, Kyle,
rolling.
that's why we're G rated. I just want you to.
I'm trying my hardest, Brian. I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah, I see your shirt though. I see. Go ahead and show us your shirt.
I didn't realize I was wearing it. I picked the most wrinkly shirt, Brian. I thought I'm just going to wear the wrinkless.
Hey, I live off the top of the laundry basket, so I'm nobody to talk to about that.
I love it. See, that's all. That's all that we can do as men, Brian, is just live off the top of the laundry
Hey, I'm
basket.
just happy that I have somebody doing my laundry for me. I'll take it however it is.
It's the greatest thing to ever happen to me, Brian. But
All right.
so it's kind of like when you're playing little league baseball and they have you buy the Rawlings baseball, and it's like I forgot what it is. It's like the R100 or 109 or whatever it is, and it's it's a baseball. It's beautiful. But then they also make these knockoff baseballs that have like a green label, and you can tell they're not high quality, and the seams are a little bit different, and you can't usually use those in a game. That's kind of like the difference. They're just two differently manufactured baseballs, and when you've been using, and of course, the collegiate ball, the prep ball is closer to the minor league ball than it is to the major league ball. So you've kind of been playing with the same baseball throughout your entire life until you get to AAA or spring training, and you're expected to kind of seam shift on the fly and get to more velocity. And I think that's also part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of arm issues and arm injuries start to really come to the forefront at AAA and AA, or AAA rather in the majors, for this very reason, because pitchers are starting to, like, they'll get to AAA, they'll get a 2 mile an hour drop on their velocity. Their slider won't break the same way. Their changeup won't break the same way. Sinker won't break the same way. And then they're trying and trying and trying and working with it and working with it and working with it. And then all of a sudden they're hurt because they're throwing something different.
So let me throw out a few names and just say, okay, based on their movement profile, because now I understand that's the key, which ones might experience this phenomenon more than others? Certainly, we got Bryson Motts and Ishan Henderson are a couple guys that are pretty obviously, right up near the top to move up. Roby did it before he got hurt. Max Rajic did it before he got hurt. No, he didn't get hurt. I guess he did
Yeah.
after he was hurt. But anyway, uh, which ones of those guys might have the most trouble with this?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Rajic. I think we saw Rajic right away. We actually, a prospect we'll talk about here in a couple within the next week, Brian, is Tekoa Roby. Tekoa Roby got promoted. By the way, he was as dominant as you're going to get at AA this year. Gets promoted to AAA and gets rocked in his first couple starts. And we saw velocity down. We saw the movement on his pitches were all over the place.
And you think that was due to the baseball?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard him say it, so it's not. And of course, I doubt that he would say that it was because of the baseball anyway. But I'm not surprised that this happens. We saw it across the board with a lot of the fringy prospects. Semro Bursa really struggled with the baseball. Adam Klopfenstein really struggled with the baseball. Ian Bedell really struggled with the baseball. Ratchik struggled with the baseball upon getting the promotion. So, but then Roby, the rumor was he was working overtime to try to get to like shift his feel of the ball on the seams to get back to his velocity and to get back to his break, and he did it.
Which he did, right? And then he got hurt.
And then he got hurt. So Brian, we said with Quinn Matthews, Quinn Matthews has been the most vocal critic, but he's not doing it in a whiny way of what it's like, the difference in between throwing the major league ball and the minor league ball, and what it feels like in your hands and trying to grip it and throw it. So I'm telling you, I really do think it's all pitchers across the board, and it's the first major test that they have on, and maybe even the toughest test in AAA. Now with the disparity between talent level between AAA and MLB, but it's a really tough test for pitchers as they make their AAA debut and adjust to the Major League Baseball.
All right, so Matt Pierpoint, who's the Cardinals director of pitching, I know he listens to this regularly. He's probably watching right now. So Matt, I got to ask you this. Why don't you get a couple of boxes of Major League Baseballs and send them down to Springfield and let them throw some pins with that ball and kind of get ready so it's not a surprise when they get to AAA? Now, granted, again, it's not in the game, but there's got to be something better than guys hitting the wall like Roby did when he gets up there. And maybe this happens behind the scene and we don't know it, but it seems kind of logical. Why not help get them prepared for the next level?
Well, Brian, if I can actually throw in some knowledge that I have, and that is actually what they are doing. So not only are, like, Bryson Mounts has a box of balls that are major league, Ishan Henderson has a box of balls. When they, like, if they're at Tread or if they're at Driveline, wherever they're at, they're working with the Major League Baseball.
Excellent.
Which is really good. But just like we know, it's one thing to do it in simulation, and it's another thing to do it in practical.
Well, but at least they're getting experience with it. And by the way, you mentioned Driveline and some of the other Tread and the other places where guys are going. Rob Cerfolio recently said, our goal as the Cardinals is to have the infrastructure and the people and the system such that folks won't have to go outside to get that training. And I thought that was very telling. They may never get there, don't know. But the fact that they've set that as a goal, I think is a great positive from where they are today.
Absolutely. Brian, what that jogs in my mind is I think about at a blogger event, they asked John Mozeliak about how he felt about players going outside of the organization. And he said that he was kind of on the fence about it. He liked that they were working out on their own and trying to get better, but he didn't like that they weren't operating on the Cardinals curriculum. It was the Tread curriculum or the Driveline, et cetera, et cetera. So they didn't have a reason to care about the arm health of the players. And this would be the positive here, is if the Cardinals are in control of it, if they had all the equipment and all the fancy tech, that they could monitor both health and gains from their pitchers. So that's why it's really important.
All right, so next topic I want to talk a little bit about. the Cardinals made their formal announcements of all their player development assignments for 2026. And a number of them have gotten out before, that they were going to have a new director of hitting, for example. But until they announced the whole thing from top to bottom, it wasn't possible to see the level of new investment that's coming. And we knew that they were netting up on coordinators, they were adding coordinators, and they continued to do that. But they also added a lot of people in the strength and conditioning area, trainers, the people that are involved in the performance side of the player development and performance, which is the Rob Cerfolio organization. So Cerfolio is AGM of player development and performance, and player development is Larry Day, the farm director, and then performance is Carl Koshin, the director of performance. So when I sat down and did the comparison year to year of the number of positions, it looks to me like a year ago they created 8 new positions netted out. When I subtract the ones that they didn't have anymore with the new ones, they netted up 8 last year, and that was primarily at the top. They wanted to get Cerfolio and his lieutenants all aligned, but by then all the people in the rest of the organization were kind of lined up for the next year, and that included the coaches in the minor leagues, the pitching coaches, the hitting coaches, and all. So this year around, they made a lot of personnel changes, but they still netted up, by my count, 14 new positions on top of 8 new positions last year in player development. Now, those numbers might not be exact, but that was my best comparison. And that 14 new positions, they brought in 28 new people and 14 people left. So coming at the same number kind of from another way, they brought in 28 new individuals into the organization, since a year ago at this time, which I think is pretty amazing.
Brian, I'm glad we're having this conversation. It gives me a chance to thank you for how you broke it down over on the Cardinal Nation. Not only how you pointed out, you had your Excel form, or your form where it shows where a guy was, or where a player, or where a coach was in 2025, where they're going to be in 2026, where the new positions. It was just so well done, because let me tell you, when the Cardinals released the piece of paper that said these are our coaching staffs, and it was all these names and then about 45 different little character legends to tell you where they were. I don't know if it's appropriate. I had a seizure and almost needed somebody to save me from myself.
You
It
can't
was
tell the
so
players without a program.
right. I was so confusing, and I looked at it and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not looking at this. And as a matter of fact, I hate all these people now because of the way the Cardinals put this forward. So the way you did it on the Cardinal Nation is the perfect way of doing it. It is simplified. It is wonderful, and it shows you all of the changes as compared to last year. And Brian, for me, like, I think they did a good job of bringing in who they brought in, the little bit of people that I know about the people. I think that they've rearranged some people into a good spot. I'd love to know a little bit more of the background between Gary Kendall's role changing. But other than that, I have no complaints, and I'm anxious to see what the 14 added positions can really do for the organization, because I think it's going to be huge.
Got a lot of new people to meet down in Florida this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, you got a
And
whole lot of networking to do, Brian.
yeah. And Cerfolio was joking about the fact, and he wasn't really joking because, of course, we know there's always humor behind, or a fact behind jokes, but that he's tired of being on Zoom because he's done so many countless interviews and had others in the organization do interviews as well. But they're bringing talent from a lot of different organizations, a lot of different ideas, and it'll be interesting how they meld this all as they go kind of into year 2 of the new player development regime. But there's certainly going to be more coaches, and it's not just guys from the outside, by the way. Like Ryan Ludwig was promoted to outfield coordinator, so he was an instructor before, and now he's going to be in a position where he's basically in charge of the outfielders. So there were guys that were around. Brock Hammett, moved up in the hitting side. So there are. It wasn't all just new guys coming in, I guess, is where I'm going from.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a good mix. Like you said, some promotions. There are still old holdovers, of course, from the last administration, but it definitely feels in a very short period of time like these are their people. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that it does feel like, even on a minor league standpoint, whether it's the people that stuck around or the people that they've brought in, that it feels very much the new regime's people. because it
Yep.
does feel like a fresh start. And there's not I'm not, it's a terrible way of putting it, Brian, but there's not like an excuse like, oh, that was their people. Like we're still like, no, this is a fresh start, a brand new foot, and it starts day one.
Mhm. All right. Last thing I want to cover before we go, and maybe next time there won't be as much news and we can kind of recap the prospects that were announced in the last week, or in this case, it'll be the last 2 weeks. But I got to give you an opportunity to discuss number 15, Daniel Ortiz, because you dropped not one, but two Albert Pujols references, and you tried to put a lot of caveats around it. But the fact remains, you dropped Albert Pujols' name in relation to Daniel Ortiz. And I want to give you a chance to defend yourself before the lynch mob shows up at your house.
I'm drunk, Brian. I'm drunk. No, I really did try so hard. I tried so hard to get so many caveats in there, Brian. I tried. And then immediately somebody's like, so he's Albert Pujols. And I was like, ah!
You know the attention span of social media, it's measured in nanoseconds. So all
Well, yeah,
they didn't need the whole word, just poo was
yeah,
enough.
yeah, especially my group. They so yeah, so now yes, he's going to be Albert Pujols. I'm just I'm who cares? Who cares? He's going to be a Hall of Fame first baseman, Gold Glove winner, all of it. It's in his profile. It's coming hard. But no, again, it's worth reading. It's one of our free articles over at the Cardinal Nation. Because Daniel Ortiz he's a fascinating prospect. He is exactly why someone like myself got into prospects. A 16th round pick out of a junior college who was under scouted, that had a lot of questions about his athleticism, who is now an undisputed top 20 prospect in the organization and 15th on our list. Like MLB and on MLB's list, on Fangraphs list, on Baseball America's list, on prospects, like all of those lists, he's going to be a top 20 prospect. He'll probably be a top 15 in a lot of them.
Hmm.
And that's exciting to me. We go over in the article about some of his deficiencies. We go over the things that he does really well, which is hit for power, hit breaking pitches particularly well in the zone. Some of the things he really struggles with which are fastballs 93 and 95 miles an hour or faster, and get into what he needs to do. And like Brian said in the article, I made a point to say there was another JUCO draft pick in the latter rounds, in the teen rounds, and that was Albert Pujols. And the couple things that they have in common is when they were drafted, they didn't have a position, and also were graded out as being poor athletes with poor speed. And both at the time, Daniel Ortiz now and 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 21-year-old Albert Pujols were probably average athletes with average speed that did more because they have high IQ with their speed and their athleticism. So that's the comparison to make there. And that's it. I think about Daniel Ortiz. He stole 39 bases in 2025, even though he is not fast and not a particularly good base stealer. And I think it tells you like kind of how illusory the stolen base numbers are at the minor leagues, that you need to take with a grain of salt.
And yeah, by the way, when he moved up to Peoria, he was only 8 for 14. So
Exactly.
he went from being a superstar to, hey, don't run as much because you're getting caught too often.
Exactly. Exactly. And we'll see that number continue to decrease. But also just because it's a really exciting thing to go over. It's just this is really cool. There's no guarantee he'll stay being a really solid prospect. The next couple levels are going to be really tough on him. But if he can adjust to really high velocity fastballs, then there's no reason to think he couldn't be an everyday major leaguer at the corner if he continues to make progress in those defensively at either position on the corner.
All right. So there you have it. Kyle's rebuttal on Daniel Albert Pujols Ortiz. And don't lose sight of what we're talking about here, and that is Kyle's excellent scouting reports. You got to read them all. You got to subscribe. But for the holidays, again, you can read about it on the site. There's a 10% off deal. You can use it as a gift for someone if you're at the last minute, or if you get some money for Christmas and you want to buy yourself a gift, that works too. 10% off through the 28th. So take advantage of that. We never have a better deal than that during the course of the year, and I guarantee you will get your money's worth. New content, 365 days a year, no exaggeration.
Love it, Brian.
All right. And again, Merry Christmas to everybody. And we'll see you all on New Year's Eve. Any last comments, Kyle?
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and I look forward to wishing you a happy new year and maybe some news between now and then.
There you go. So that's a wrap for the 24th edition of Wednesday with Walton Reis. Thanks for watching and listening.